What makes your lettuce wilt by tomorrow isn't your refrigerator. It isn't the plastic bag. It may be the exact time of day you cut it from the garden. Pick that same lettuce at 7 in the morning and it can feel cold, stiff, almost squeaky between your fingers. Cut it at 2 in the afternoon, after hours under the sun, and it may already be losing the battle before you ever carry it through the kitchen door. Almost nobody talks about that anymore. I'm Ron. Johanna and I have lived off-grid for more than 40 years, and in all that time, I've never paid an electric bill. Most of what kept us going wasn't fancy equipment. It was little pieces of old knowledge like this: timing, observation, knowing when to work with a plant instead of fighting against it. And today, I want to show you exactly why harvesting before breakfast can keep certain vegetables crisper, firmer, and fresher longer, along with the mistakes that can erase that advantage before you even get back inside. Because here's the first thing most people forget. A vegetable doesn't become dead the moment you pick it. It is still living tissue, still breathing, still losing moisture, still changing. All night long, while you're asleep, the garden has been recovering from the day before. The air cools, the soil cools. The roots continue taking up moisture. The plant is no longer fighting the full force of the sun or losing water as quickly into hot, dry air. Then morning comes. Walk outside before breakfast and touch a healthy lettuce leaf. Feel how full it is, how firm, how almost brittle it feels when it's well hydrated. Now compare that with the same plant late in the afternoon on a hot day. The leaf may still look perfectly green, but it can feel softer, looser, tired. Have you ever noticed that in your own garden? That difference is one of the reasons harvest timing matters. Picture 2 green beans from the same row. One gets picked at 7 in the morning. The other gets picked at 2 in the afternoon. Same variety, same soil, same fertilizer. Same gardener, bend the morning bean, and you often get that clean little snap. Pick another after hours of heat, and sometimes it bends a little more before breaking. That sound tells you something. The morning bean has spent the cool hours replenishing moisture. The afternoon bean has spent hours exposed to heat, sunlight, wind, and water loss. Years ago, Johanna and I learned this lesson with a long row of beans behind the house. We had more work than daylight that week. Fence repair, water lines, a shed roof that had decided to start leaking all at once. One morning, I looked at those beans and thought, I'll get them later. Later turned into noon. By then, the sun was high enough that you could smell the heat coming off the soil. You know that smell: warm dirt, green leaves, dry grass, that heavy midsummer air that makes everything move a little slower. I filled a basket anyway. That evening, Johanna cooked some of those beans beside a handful I had happened to pick early that morning from another section. She didn't need a laboratory. She handed me one from each batch. The difference was right there in my mouth. The early beans were firmer, cleaner, brighter. The later beans were still perfectly edible, but they had already lost a little of that just-picked quality. And there's a name for one of the things working against you: field heat. Wait, because this part matters more than most gardeners realize. When you pick vegetables after they've been sitting in warm air and sunlight for hours, you're bringing some of that heat with them. That heat is not your friend after harvest. Warm produce loses moisture faster. Its internal processes continue moving along. Wilting, softening, and quality loss can happen faster than they would if you had started with a cooler vegetable. So if you pick something already cool, you begin the storage process ahead. If you pick it hot, you begin behind. Think about lettuce. At 7 in the morning, you cut a head and the outer leaves feel cool against your palm. At 2 in the afternoon, the same head may have spent 6 or 7 hours absorbing heat. Then some folks make it worse. They cut it. Set it in a basket. Leave the basket sitting in full sun. Finish another row. Talk to the neighbor. Go inside 20 minutes later. By that point, you've taken the most perishable thing in the garden and turned the basket into a little oven. Don't do that. Pick it, shade it, cool it, simple rhythm. Pick it, shade it, cool it. This is especially important with leafy greens: lettuce, spinach, chard, kale, fresh herbs. These crops can lose that crisp feeling quickly because so much of what you enjoy about them depends on water inside their cells. But the same principle matters with beans, peas, cucumbers, zucchini, broccoli, cabbage, and other tender produce. And sweet corn deserves special attention. Have you ever eaten an ear of corn right after it came out of the garden? I mean really fresh corn, not something that sat in a truck, not something that spent days under fluorescent grocery store lights. An ear you twisted from the stalk yourself. There is a sweetness there that doesn't hang around forever. Once corn is picked, the quality starts changing. That's why the old saying was to have your cooking water ready before you harvested the corn. Maybe that sounds excessive. But those old gardeners understood something the modern schedule makes easy to forget. Harvest is not the end of growing, it is the beginning of decline. Your job is to slow that decline. Now cucumbers are another one. Pick one early and notice how it feels in your hand. Cool, dense, heavy. The skin almost seems tighter. Then pick one after, a hot afternoon. Again, it may look fine, but the plant has been working all day, moving water, losing water, responding to heat. Those little differences add up after harvest. Here's another pattern interrupt most people miss. The best harvest window isn't simply as early as physically possible. There's a detail. If everything is dripping wet with heavy dew, I don't always rush through crops that I intend to store. Surface moisture matters too. So my favorite window is often when the morning is still cool, but the heaviest dew has begun to dry. Cool produce, dry enough to handle, before the heat builds. That is a beautiful little window. And once you start paying attention to it, you can almost feel the garden changing minute by minute. At dawn, the leaves are cold. Then the sun touches the top of the plants. A little later, the insects become louder. The air loses that cool edge. The soil smell changes. Then suddenly you realize the day has arrived. That's your signal. The clock isn't really running the garden. The garden is running the clock. But wait, because onions, garlic, and winter squash are where people sometimes misunderstand this advice. Not every crop should be treated exactly like lettuce. Dry storage crops have different priorities. You want onions and garlic properly cured. You want dry outer skins. You want winter squash handled without damaging the rind. So harvest before breakfast is not some magical commandment for every single thing growing in the ground. It is a principle. For tender vegetables where crispness and water loss matter, cooler harvest conditions can give you an advantage. For crops that need curing, dryness and maturity become part of the equation. Old knowledge is rarely about one rigid rule. It's about learning to read what you're holding. And morning gives you another advantage that has nothing to do with temperature. You see better, not because there is more light, because you are paying attention. Before breakfast, before the phone starts ringing, before errands, before heat, before the day crowds your head, you notice things. You see the zucchini that needs picking today, not tomorrow. You spot the cucumber hiding behind the leaf before it grows too large. You see which bean pods have filled. You notice a damaged leaf, a caterpillar, a wilted stem, a tomato beginning to change color. You become a better gardener because you're finally quiet enough to look. Johanna used to tell me, "The garden talks quiet." She was right. It does not shout. It gives little signs. Texture, color, smell, weight, a leaf sitting differently than yesterday, a fruit pulling away with less resistance. The morning is when I hear those signs best. And this is where I want you to remember one simple thing. A perfect harvest can still be ruined 10 minutes later. You can pick the crispest lettuce in the county at sunrise and destroy the advantage by leaving it sitting in the sun. So, I carry a basket, not a sealed plastic bag. The basket breathes. As soon as I pick something tender, it goes somewhere shaded. If I'm working a long row, I don't leave that basket out in the open while I finish the whole garden. Move it, shade it, set it back, keep the heat off, and handle things gently. Every bruise is damage. Every crushed leaf is damage. Every cucumber tossed into a bucket from shoulder height is damage. You might not see it immediately, but storage exposes your mistakes. And later, I'll tell you exactly where you can still find free land in this country, because once you understand how much food a small space can actually produce, you start looking at land very differently. Johanna also taught me another rule. Don't automatically wash everything just because you harvested it. If I'm using something right away, that's one thing. But washing vegetables and putting them away wet can create another problem entirely. Moisture trapped where it shouldn't be can shorten storage life. So our rhythm became simple. Harvest cool, keep it shaded, cool it down, wash what you need, store the rest properly. That little routine saves food. And when you live off what you grow, saving food means saving months of work. All right, let me stop here for just a minute, because what I showed you is only a small piece of what Johanna and I learned in 40 years living this way. We put more than 100 of our projects into one place called the self-sufficient backyard. Water systems, low-cost power, year-round food, and ways to make a small homestead produce far more than most people think possible. And you do not need a giant farm. A little over 1,000 square feet per person can go a surprisingly long way. You don't need to be rich either. I started as a city kid from Philadelphia who had never grown so much as a tomato. Right now, it's available for $37 instead of $128, and it includes 3 bonuses: a guide to finding free land in America, a collection of old 1900s DIY survival projects, and a course on growing fish and vegetables together with aquaponics. There's also a 60-day refund period. If it isn't for you, you can send it back. The link is in the description. Now back to the garden, because the next mistake is the one that can make people throw away half the advantage they got from harvesting at the right time. Cooling the vegetable doesn't mean shocking everything in ice water and hoping for the best. It means getting field heat out without damaging the crop. For the home gardener, that often starts with the simplest things. Get it out of direct sunlight. Get it indoors. Use the proper storage conditions for that particular vegetable. And don't pile hot vegetables into a deep container where heat gets trapped in the middle. Imagine 20 warm cucumbers stacked together. The outside may cool, the center may stay warm much longer. Same thing can happen with beans, greens, and other produce packed too tightly. So use shallow containers when it makes sense. Let air move, don't crush the bottom layer, and don't confuse cold with good for everything. Tomatoes, cucumbers, greens, onions, garlic, potatoes, they do not all want the exact same treatment. The real lesson is not put everything in the refrigerator. The lesson is to preserve the condition you worked so hard to create. That's why I want you to try an experiment. Tomorrow morning, take 1 crop. Beans are perfect, lettuce is perfect, cucumbers are perfect. Pick half early. Then, if the weather is warm and the crop is still in comparable condition, pick the other half later in the day. Treat both batches the same after harvest. Set them side by side that evening, then check them tomorrow. Don't just look, touch them, bend the beans, feel the lettuce ribs, lift the cucumbers, taste them, let the vegetables teach you. Because once you feel that difference yourself, you won't need me to convince you anymore. You'll start looking at harvest differently. You'll understand why our grandparents did so much garden work early. It wasn't because they enjoyed waking up before breakfast. Well, some of them did. It was because the cool hours gave them an advantage. And when you had no giant supermarket 5 minutes away, you respected every advantage you could get. Less waste mattered. Another day of freshness mattered. A basket of beans staying crisp mattered. And you have to wonder, why do the big food corporations, the seed companies, the folks who send you that electric bill every month, why don't they want you knowing any of this? There's a reason people are trying to keep books like this one off the shelves. It's not because it doesn't work. It's because it works too well. So here's your challenge. Before breakfast this week, harvest 1 vegetable. Just 1. Pick it cool, move it into the shade. Handle it gently. Store it correctly. Then compare it with what you normally do. And when you see the result, come back here and tell me what you harvested. Lettuce, beans, cucumbers, corn? I read the comments and I want to know which crop showed the biggest difference for you. If you want more of these old methods, give the video a like and subscribe to the channel. We're bringing back practical knowledge that used to be common sense before convenience made us forget it. And in the next video, I'm going to show you a mistake that can undo everything you learned today. You harvest perfect vegetables. You wash them. You put them away, still wet. Then a few days later, you open the container and find soft spots, slime, or rot spreading through food that was perfectly good when it left the garden. That tiny layer of trapped water can become the beginning of the problem. I'll show you which vegetables you should wash immediately, which ones should stay dry until you use them, and the simple storage habit Johanna and I follow after every harvest. Until then, get outside early. Take the basket. Let the coffee wait 5 minutes. The garden won't.